Hey, YouTube, back with episode number 2, or what I'm calling chapters, because I'm, tricky like that. I think I was going to call it observation number 1 and number 2, and so on and so forth. Then I thought, that's treading a little finely close to Opeth. So, and some of you might wonder why my hair's always blowing and why there's always an air moving. Again, I have dysautonomia, which means that my body will not handle temperature changes properly. I'm either freezing cold or scorching hot, and it's getting cold up here in the northeast now. I think it got that about 37 tonight, and my old man has type 2 diabetes, and he's always cold. I'm always hot, and the baseboard heaters are on I can shut them off, but then I'm freezing. So I got to kind of keep them on. They don't have a low or high. They're tied into a central thermostat. And unfortunately, I got to keep an air moving on me, because otherwise I'll just start sweating my balls off. So not that you needed to or wanted to know about that. Anyways, back to episode or chapter number 2 in sharing a 6-pack with Metalmadness66. And I got 6 more pulls for you tonight or today or whenever this posts. And let's jump into it, because I don't need to get into... Oh, the one thing I did want to quickly address was I'm not going to get Rick to do individual thumbnails for these. He's done so damn much for me, and I say that in my first episode chapters description. He's done so much for me out of the goodness of his heart. Like, I just can't even begin to describe what Rick's done for me with the deep dive, the gas mask stuff. And I would feel absolutely like shit asking to do these. Maybe I'll come up with just a general one that's just whatever, and then if he shows me how to change the chapter, I'll do that. But maybe we'll just do something like that, where it's one thumbnail that I can put up instead of my ugly mug, and we'll come up with something like that. Something to do with alcohol, only I don't really drink hardly at all. So what I am drinking, though, since you're sharing a 6-pack with me, is some high-quality H2O. Right here, as you can see, Weiss quality natural spring water. I'm sure they take it out of a tap somewhere, or a hose probably. But I'm one of those idiots that thinks that drinking out of a plastic bottle with all the polycarbons and all that in there is safer than drinking it out of the faucet. I'm dumb like that. So, all right, we're gonna get into it, and we're gonna make these, like I said, 20 or 30 minutes max. So, let's get started here. Number 1, my autographed copy of Gary Newman's The Pleasure Principle. It is the 30th anniversary expanded edition with the weirdly placed lyrics on the front, as opposed to maybe like that should have been the... I guess I could flip it around, but then it... Anyways, I guess I could do that, couldn't I? Yeah, I could do that. It's kind of weird, though, the way they designed it. It's not meant to be that way, but I guess I could have done this. There we go. Is that better? Is that all nicey nice? Yeah, Gary Newman, The Pleasure Principle, came out September 7th, 1979. And it's a 2-disc version, which all kind of demos, and the album on the first disc. And I got this signed in 2013 at the Vintage Vinyl in New Jersey, where my buddy Serge will know, because we've shopped there many, many times. They are now no longer, sadly, a going concern. They closed their business last summer. Gary came in and did an in-store with the band, and it was super cool. Got to see him perform like 4 or 5 songs in this small little stage with maybe... I can't imagine there was more than like 75 of us there. But then I got to get in line and meet him, and got a bunch of my shit signed. And all you had to do was buy, at that time, the latest album, which was called Splinter. But I got him to sign this because I got this, I don't know, 10 years, oh, whatever. It's at the 43rd now, I guess, right? Something like that. Anyways, 19 was, yeah, this was the 30th, which I think came out in 09, but I got it then and then got him to sign it in 13. So, one of my favorite artists, a very pivotal artist in my opinion. Without this album, and without Gary Newman's influence, I don't think you have bands like 9 Inch Nails. Trent would tell you that. You don't have Skinny Puppy, Frontline Assembly, KMFDM. This guy, in my opinion, really kind of started the mix of rock and electronica with his Polymoog use and his big hit Cars, which is on here. Of course, I'm sure everyone has heard that at least once. On this, it's a 10 out of 10, 20 out of 10, whatever you want to call it. The song Metal on there is killer. Films is really cool. It's, I believe, one of the most used samples is from that song, the little drum breakdown. Anyways, I can't do it, but there's a very famous drum fill that comes from that song, Films, that like every hip hop artist has used probably on a recording at some point. ME is killer. Cars, of course. I mean, come on, man. Here in my car, I feel safest of all. Air Lane, the intro is really, really cool. Complex. Every song in here is killer. Tracks, Conversation, Engineers. It's just a badass album. Came out, as I said, September 7th, 1979 on Beggar's Banquet. Gary Newman, producer. Pivotally instrumental album, I think, in creating industrial, electronica industrial. This album is fucking amazing. Next up, we have Antimatter, Savior. This is an interesting partnership between a English guitarist and singer named Mick Moss and bassist, programmer, writer Duncan Patterson. Now, if you know your heavy metal, your Peaceville 3, Peaceville 4, whatever you want to call it, out bands, you will know that Duncan Patterson was one of the original, I believe, members. I think he was original. I'm not sure if he was on the early EPs, but I know he was on the albums proper for Anathema. He was a bass player. He wrote a lot of their killer stuff on Eternity, Silent Enigma. He wrote a lot of the stuff that's on Alternative 4, which is killer. I believe he was on the 2000 album Judgment, I believe, and then he left. And he paired up with this guy, Mick Moss, to create this band called Antimatter. And man, I forgot how good this album is. I cheated on this one. I did go listen to one song off this because I was trying to remember the line, the vocal line from it, and this album is kind of a mixture. Vestibon's Bloodvox. If you're watching this, you'll love this album, Justin. This is kind of a gothy mixture of some. I don't want to call it techno because it's not techno at all. There's a couple songs on here that are beat driven, but a lot of it is just this incredibly evocative, atmospheric, sad, melancholic, beautiful goth album that is, we're not talking typo goth here, we're talking, oh my god, kind of a bit of Dead Can Dance, but not the world influence, more the dreary, drab, sad part of early, like Within the Realms of a Dying Sun or something like that. But it's really not like that at all either. I don't even know who to really point to, except for to say, when I say goth, I don't mean it's like Black Mascara goth, you know. No offense, Serge. It's not that kind of goth, although it kind of could be, I guess. As far as I know, they put 3 albums out with Duncan in the fold, and then he left, and they got a little bit more harder rock, a little bit more prog rock, and there is some prog on here, but man, this album is fucking amazing. It came out in the United States on the End Records on September 4th, 2001, produced by Duncan Patterson and Mick Moss. Just going through my notes here. Yeah, it's alt rock, but not in the sense of what you think as alt rock. Not, you know, late 90s, early 2000 alt rock. It's not fucking, well, for example, it's not Sponge. It's nothing like that. It's super melodic yet dirgy, very sad and lilting, very beautiful, man. It is just a beautiful album, and the song Savior's great. That's kind of the upbeat rocker on it. Over Your Shoulder is really killer track. The Last Laugh is amazing. Going Nowhere. Psalms is a beautiful, beautiful track. God Is Coming, man. God Is Coming has a Nine Inch Nailsy feel to it, only not as metallic, more goth got Nine Inch Nails. And then the song Flowers on here. Oh my God. There's a singer on here named Michelle Richfield. She sings on like 6 tracks. Her voice is amazing. I don't know if she's done anything since then, since working with Mick. I think she did work on some later albums. I have all 3 albums. The second one's called Lights Out, and Planetary Confinement's the 3rd album. They're all as good or better than this, but this one is stellar. I'm telling you right here, man, this album is killer, 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 killer. Mick was a friend of Daniel Kavanagh from Anathema. They even did some work together. I believe they put out a live acoustic album, or maybe they even put out a full album. Again, I didn't do a lot of research on these because I want them to be off the cuff. And Antimatter, Savior, absolutely fucking stellar album. That is a 9.5 out of 10. All right, next up, we're going into the new agey shit here when I pulled this one. Mike Oldfield. If you know The Exorcist, you would know that Mike Oldfield did the soundtrack to The Exorcist, and he did an album called Tubular Bells, Amadon, Hergest Ridge. Mike was kind of one of the original sort of, I guess you want to call him guitar prodigy sort of dudes from the UK, but he kind of moved further and further away from the soundtracky stuff and started, well, this is very soundtracky because it's written about Arthur C. Clarke's Songs from the Distant Earth, the novel or book that he wrote. But this is very ethereal, very ambient, very amazing stuff to put on in the background if you're doing work around the house or you're even working. This is a killer album to listen to. Stellar guitar work. We're not talking wankish. We're talking really atmospheric, almost uplifting, almost in a spiritual way. This album is so spiritually beautiful. It's probably my favorite album of his, even over Tubular Bells and the, Amadon and Hergest Ridge and some of his 3 Miles Out and man, he's got a lot of albums out, and I'm forgetting some of the names of some of them. Crap, there's one that has a green cover, and I can't remember the name of it. Anyways, Mike Oldfield. This is beautiful, beautiful stuff, man. It was released in November 21st, 1994. Warner Brothers Entertainment. It was produced by Mike Oldfield. Again, very new agey, but gorgeous, and not at all like what you think of like Yanni or John Tesh. We talked about that the other stream the other night. Let There Be Light is Killer Magellan. Only Time Will Tell. The whole thing's just beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous, lush album. And, as I said, man, you're going to get some metal in some of these, but you're also going to get some stuff that is way off the metal track. And this is certainly off the metal track for sure. Okay, we've got 3 more. This is a double CD, Pat Metheny Group. This is called Travels. This came out in 1982. I couldn't find a release date on this thing. Came out on ECM Records, produced by Pat Metheny and, what's his name? Manfred Eicher, who owns ECM. And Manfred is a pretty eclectic dude, and he loves putting albums out. But for the longest time, until Geffen signed Pat Metheny, Pat was signed to ECM over in Europe, and this is a double live album. If you don't know who Pat Metheny is, he's probably one of the preeminent, if not the preeminent, jazz guitarists you'll hear about in the jazz world of guitar. I think his first album came out in the mid '70s, American Garage, I believe, or Bright Size Life. Forget which one. I'm a huge Pat Metheny fan. This album is really unique because at this point in time, Pat was experimenting with something called the the Fairlight, he was basically using a synthesizer that was attached through electronics to a special pickup in his guitar, to where he could literally play synthesizer lines. His guitar sort of sounds like a synthesizer on it, but still sounds like a guitar. It has some of the most exquisite sounds a guitar could ever make. This album is live. I don't know how much overdubbing. I'm sure some went on. It's from performances from 1982 while they were touring for the album Off Ramp, which is really killer. I love Pat Metheny, although I stopped collecting his stuff many, many years ago because he got, he was doing standard jazz, the Pat Metheny group, which was more, I'd call it more world jazz and sort of ensemble group stuff. So you had keyboards with Lyle Mays, who died. You had recently, I think Gottlieb was on bass, Nana Vasconcelos on percussion. I can't remember who his drummer was. Probably says in here, but it doesn't really matter. This album is, again, amazing background music or driving music. Man, this album is killer for driving late at night. Extremely fucking beautiful music. Pat's one of the best guitar players in the world. Songs to look at there. Let's see. Are You Going With Me? Phase Dance. Farmer's Trust, one of the most beautiful melodies I've ever heard played on the guitar, period. Song for Bilbao. And then, of course, the As Falls Wichita Falls, So Falls Wichita Falls, which is like a 20-minute piece that is just, oh my God. That album, As Falls Wichita Falls, my favorite by Pat Metheny Group. Killer stuff. Very highly recommended. Next to last album, The Verve. And this is called Urban Hymns. This came out, it was produced by Chris, I can't read my writing, Palter, The Verve, and Youth from Killing Joke. This came out 9/29/97 and came out on Virgin and Hut Records. You all know, most of you know one song off this album. You've heard Bittersweet Symphony. It's a bittersweet symphony, this life. Anyways, I love that song, although it was kind of written by Keith Richards and Mick Jagger, and they had to pay a lot of money to those guys once they didn't initially credit them with it. This album, it's alternative rock, but it's not, man. It's just a fucking killer album, start to finish. I only have one other of their albums. Other stuff I listened to, they didn't last long after this album from what I recall, but Bittersweet Symphony is just an amazing fucking tune. That dun 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 dun. It gets in your head and you can't fucking ever get it out. Sonnet, yeah, life's like a sonnet. Great song. The Rolling People's killer. The Drugs Don't Work, man. That's a killer fucking tune. So damn good. What else is on here, man? Lucky Man, because I'm a lucky man. It's not Lucky Man from ELP, by the way. Just an amazing, it's an amazing album, man. It's their high watermark. As far as I know, they've been broke up for quite a long time. But their singer Richard Ashcroft, I think he might have had some either drug problems or mental illness problems. I can't remember, but what an amazing voice this dude has. Great voice. Very unique, distinctive. Some great psychedelic riffage on here. It's not a heavy metal album. It's a rock album, alternative rock album, but it's really fucking good. Really, really good. The Verve and Urban Hymns. And lastly, Brian Ferry and Mamuna. Oh, Jesus, this fucking album. Holy shit. This is a 20 out of 10. The Verve, I give that a 8 out of 10. I give the Pat Metheny a 9 out of 10. I give the Mike Oldfield an 8 out of 10. And the Antimatter, I give a 10 out of 10. But this album, man, it's a 20 out of 10. It's my favorite Brian Ferry solo album, and that's saying something because almost every one of his solo albums from the 80s on are just fucking stellar. This album is just, oh, it's so dark and beautiful and mixes all the various things that Brian Ferry does well, so good. That came out 8/31/94. Brian Ferry and Robin Trower producing, and Virgin Records. And I'm gonna say every single song on here is killer, but Don't Want to Know's killer, NYC's killer, Your Painted Smile. God, his voice on there is so incredible. The 39 Steps, Which Way to Turn. I didn't know which way to turn. Gemini Moon is amazing. Chain Reaction. It's a chain reaction. Oh, God. This album, man, if you're a dude and you want to, you know, get really romantic with your lady, this album right here, absolutely amazing. If you're a woman and you want to get romantic with your man, this album right here. Brian Ferry Mamuna, it is a 20 out of 10. It is fucking killer. And so that wraps up chapter 2, guys, and we'll see where we're at. See if you like these. This is an even shorter one because I didn't have to go through all the explanation, and we're going to keep these in the 20 to 30 minute range. And again, sorry for my hair blowing on my face. I couldn't find a hair tie. We'll get this sorted out at some point in time, or maybe these, I'll only do 2 of these and you'll never see them again. But yeah, so check out chapter 1 if you didn't check out that first. And yeah, check out chapter 2, and we'll see you soon.